Welcome. Thank you for everyone for being here today, for all of the hard work that you've put in these last few months, this last year to make this day possible. The Witness Stones Project is an integral part of the Greenwich Historical Society's mission to tell a fuller history of Greenwich. In doing your work, you have helped bring to light the stories and memories of Phillis, Milley, Rose, and Charles. Their stories are not always easy, but they are so important to tell. I am incredibly proud of all the work that you guys put into this. In the 4 years since I started the Witness Stones Project here, we have told many stories. We have told the stories of Candace, Hester, and Jack. We've told the stories of Cull, Patience, and Cull Jr. In telling these stories, lay the foundations for today. Cull and Patience gave us the context to understand their daughters. And Jack and Cull Jr. and Cull Sr. gave us insight into what Charles's life might have been like. But this year is the first year that the stories we tell remain largely incomplete. We do not know what became of Phillis, Milley, Rose, and Charles after they left this site. This is heartbreaking to know. It can be mind-reeling and it's saddening, but I don't want you to be discouraged. The rest of their stories are out there, and one day we're going to find them in some dusty volume or faraway library, and we'll come back and we'll tell the rest of their tales. In the meantime, we will say their names and tell what part of their stories we do know, that they were here, that they were loved, and that they were important. So thank you again for being here, for telling these stories, and for carrying them on in your hearts. Without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic along to Dennis Culliton, the founder of the Witness Stones Project. Dennis?
Thank you. It's so nice. It's so nice to see you all. For 25 years I taught 8th graders, and now I teach teachers. So it's nice to see the kids again. So I really appreciate that. When we started the project in 2017, it was after I had given a talk about my own research in Guilford and Madison, Connecticut at the local library. And then a friend of mine, Doug Nygren, went to Germany and came back after seeing the Stolperstein, which are stones that are put in the ground where Jews lived freely before they were kidnapped and murdered during the Holocaust. In 2017, there were 60,000 Stolperstein memorials across Central Europe. Now there are 100,000. But when he came to me, the big piece was that taking these documents and making sense of them is kind of hard for us adults. So the idea is, how do we make sense of them? And really we make sense of them by trying to tell these individual stories, trying to tell stories of individuals and remembering them, and if we are blessed as we are here in Greenwich, remembering them at a place where they were held in captivity, so that we can both kind of see, hear, and feel the lives that they had. It is so important, the work that you're doing, which is restoring their history and honoring their humanity. And it is something that we need to do for other groups too, and we're beginning to look at those groups, right? I think this month is the, you gotta help me out there. It's Asian Pacific Island and Hawaii month, and we're beginning to tell those stories too. There's even great stories of Hawaiians in Connecticut during the 19th century. It's unimaginable, but that's true. But the work that you're doing is part of this larger network now. We're working from southern or south central New Jersey all the way up to Massachusetts now. We're working in Rhode Island, in Rye, New York, and Scarsdale, New York, and about 24 communities here in Connecticut. And we hope through our website and through the work that you're doing and the work that Heather's doing here in the Historical Society, the information gets uploaded and it becomes available. But it is a lot of heavy lifting, as Teresa and I find, and Heather, when we try to find the primary documents to share with the students. But we're hoping for the next generation that those documents become more available. So you're part of a trend, you're part of something that's just beginning, telling these stories. And so I appreciate the work of the students, and I certainly appreciate the work of your teachers and our friends and partners here in Greenwich. So thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. Hello. My name is Teresa Vega. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We've gathered here today once again to pay tribute to the remarkable individuals who resided, toiled, and loved within the historic Bush Holly house here. Let us honor the memories of Phillis, Milley, and Rose and etch their names into the collective consciousness. While the Bush family formed a part of David Bush's household, they were also widely recognized within the Hang Root neighborhood of Greenwich and beyond. And I'm going to keep saying beyond for a reason. As enslaved individuals, they endured and navigated the harsh realities of slavery to the best of their abilities. The lives of Cole Sr., Patience, Candace, Phyllis, Milley, Rose, Lucy, Nanny, Cole Jr., and Jack and Hester held profound significance then, and their importance persists today. Some among them lived through the post-Revolutionary War era, bravely embarking on their first steps towards freedom, their heads held high in the knowledge that they were finally emancipated. Over the past 2 decades, I've dedicated myself to decolonizing the archives and unearthing ancestral information, included that of my ancestors who, like the Bush family, were among the earliest enslaved inhabitants of Greenwich. The research journey into the lives of the enslaved is far from easy. It is not for the faint of heart. Numerous substantial challenges loom, such as the erasure of people's indigenous heritage through what is often referred to as paper genocide, the changing of and shifting of racial categories, the absence of surnames, or the change in the spelling of surnames due to the English takeover of New Netherlands, the discovery of biased accounts concerning African American and indigenous people. Some of these biased accounts can really get to you, as well as the scarcity of representation in the archives for African and indigenous women. Indeed, those of us who are engaged in this research must seek breadcrumbs within libraries and archives, hoping to uncover the hidden stories of enslaved individuals. We persist as we know that somewhere out there lie narratives awaiting discovery, waiting to be illuminated like golden nuggets among the fragments we find. My research delves into the histories of all Black Greenwich Hang Root families, often marked by endogamy in Greenwich, Westchester, and beyond. The significance of looking beyond Greenwich becomes evident when considering that many descendants of the enslaved departed from this space here in search of better opportunities and a better future elsewhere. Similar to my own family, these descendants still exist today. On behalf of Nicandra Boyd Hopkins, a descendant of the Bush family members you are honoring today, she asked me to convey her warm regards to the students assembled here, expressing immense gratitude for your tireless efforts. Rest assured, your work has not gone unnoticed by us. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Deborah Meckie, Heather Lodge, Stephanie Barnett, and the entire staff of the Greenwich Historical Society. Additionally, I am deeply appreciative and grateful to this man, Dennis Culliton, for spearheading this project in the first place. I want to say every person who has ever lived has a story waiting to be told. It is by viewing these stories through different perspectives that we gain a true understanding of how this country came into being. To the students and teachers present here today, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude on behalf of all descendants of enslaved people from Greenwich. Your dedication and commitment to uncovering our true ancestral stories is admired by all of us. I like to say you are my heroes and sheroes, let's say. And I would also say that we appreciate the contribution you're doing to local history here in Greenwich, Fairfield County, and the rest of Connecticut. Within libraries and archives lie countless more untold stories waiting to be discovered. My hope is that your participation in this project will ignite a desire to uncover these narratives that deserve to be shared. The act of telling these stories holds tremendous importance, so do not keep them for yourself. Now I'm going to brag. In closing, I'm thrilled to announce that I finally have taken my own advice. Next month, which is like next week sometime, my first article, peer-reviewed article, will be published revealing how 3 critical documents, think breadcrumbs, one breadcrumb leading to another, led me directly back to one of my earliest enslaved ancestors, a man by the name of Manuel de Gerrit de Grace, who survived the Middle Passage from Angola to New Amsterdam in 1626. It was a remarkable discovery, a golden nugget of information. It's taken over 20 years, and all I needed was 3 documents. One breaking down brick wall after brick wall after brick wall. My article will detail all the other famous New Amsterdam ancestors I have. Last year, when I spoke to a different class, I spoke about Cuff Bush, who was born 1733 here in Horseneck, Greenwich, who was owned by James Houston. Cuff proudly served as a member of the Black Brigade, which sailed from New York City to Nova Scotia at the end of the Revolutionary War. I want to say that the story that started here does not end here. There's another story that needs to be told. In recognition of Cuff's 5 years of service to the British Crown, he was granted not only a General Birch Certificate of Freedom, but he also received a land grant warrant. Today I find myself pondering the question, who exactly was Cuff Bush? Could he be the father, uncle, or cousin of some of the Bush family whom we celebrate and honor today? This inquiry has inspired me to embark on writing a 2-part article for the Connecticut Ancestry Society, delving not only into Cuff's story from Greenwich and Fairfield County, but also those other Black loyalists from Greenwich and surrounding areas who heard and heeded a distinct call for freedom. With that in mind, I extend a challenge to all of you to keep delving into history's depths. Keep digging, and thank you for your unwavering dedication.
We now invite to the podium the first of our student speakers, Ms. Chloe, telling the story of Phillis.
Hi, my name is Chloe Clark. I'm a 7th grader at Sacred Heart. Throughout this past school year, our history class has learned about the life of the enslaved and treatment of the enslaved people in the late 1700s and early 1800s. Nearing the end of the school year, we were assigned to do a witness stone project on an enslaved person who lived in the Bush Holly House. Kevin Bales once said, "Slavery is theft, theft of life, theft of work, theft of any property or produce, theft even of the children a slave might have borne." I believe this quote is very true. Slavery took many people's lives, it took many people's freedoms, it was a cycle that sadly passed from generation to generation. Slavery dehumanized millions of people across the globe. Many enslaved were mistreated and recognized as property or objects instead of living human beings. This year we learned about the Gradual Emancipation Act and the 5 themes of slavery and how they connected to many slaves' lives. For example, during Phillis's life, she was born into slavery in 1789. She was given away at the early age to Sarah Bush. She had 6 siblings that lived with her in the Bush Holly house. We lost much information on her after her young age. We do know that she had to be freed at the age of 21 due to the Gradual Emancipation Act. This act was set up to slowly abolish slavery. If you were born after the date or on the date of March 1st, 1784, you would be able to be freed between the ages of 21 through 25. Just like how I learned all this information on Phillis, you can learn by visiting the places that they lived and worked, by also reading the documents that might give clues to more about their life. As I was saying, Phillis was able to be freed between the ages of 21 and 25. We do not have much information on her after that, but we can assume that she got married and lost her last name. To dive deeper into how she connects to the 5 themes of slavery, we can see that she was a part of the economics of slavery because she was sold off at a young age. In addition, we can see that she connected to the agency of resistance because she was legally able to be freed at 21 due to the Gradual Emancipation Act, showing that she had a choice. After doing much research on this topic, it showed me how important it is to remember the enslaved. Remembering the enslaved is essential for recognizing and acknowledging the profound injustices that they experienced. Slavery was a horrific system that dehumanized millions of people, denying them of their basic rights and subjecting them to unimaginable suffering. By remembering the enslaved, we can ensure that their stories, struggles, and contributions are not forgotten. Honoring the resistance of the enslaved allows us to stand against injustices and inequality today. Thank you, Phillis.
Next, we have Miss Elizabeth.
Is that the correct one?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Come on up.
I know the wrong name. Go ahead, sweetie.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ariel Duncan, and I am a 7th grader at Sacred Heart Greenwich. Throughout this school year, our history classes focused on the colonial history and the period of slavery in the United States of America. As we eventually got closer to the end of the year, we began to work on our culminating research of the one enslaved person assigned to our class for the Witness Stone project. My history class concentrated on the life of Milley, a former enslaved young woman. During our research, exceedingly little information on her life was found, but we discovered that she worked for the Bush family in the Bush Holly house. We also found that Milley was most likely emancipated at age 21 due to the laws associated with the gradual and full emancipation in Connecticut. We don't fully know how Milley lived, nor do we have specific knowledge concerning how long she lived. This period of American history showed that informational records of enslaved women were not a priority. As we entered this project, we learned about the 5 themes of slavery to understand how enslaved people lived and were treated. These themes are dehumanization, the treatment of the enslaved, paternalism, economics, and human agency and resistance. Dehumanization is the process of depriving a person or group of persons of positive human traits. This simply means that human rights were renounced from human beings. Slavery was dehumanizing because enslaved individuals were seen as property, and their owners often treated them as like animals and objects. The treatment of the enslaved showed that the enslaved were not considered persons, did not have the same rights, and were treated differently than other members of society. They were often punished for running away, not working fast enough, or being late for what they were supposed to work on. Some of these punishments took the form of torture, imprisonment, or being sold away. Paternalism is the practice of people in power to restrict the rights of their subordinates while claiming it is for their own good. The owners had absolute control over their servants. This resulted in the severe restrictions on the enslaved. Economics showed that slavery benefited the slaveholder and the economy overall. Auctions were often held to sell healthy slaves between the ages of 25 to 45 years old. This shows an example of the financial benefits enjoyed by the slave owners for owning slaves. Human agency and resistance are the decisions the enslaved can make independently to demonstrate free choice. Even if they were emancipated or kept as a slave for the rest of their life, the enslaved would still make independent choices. For example, they may have chosen to get married and have children. Slaves would withstand slavery by attempting to escape or rebel against their owners. Their efforts to escape and find freedom were strong, but the owners would try to bring them back by conducting a search party. If the slaves were found, they were punished. These themes are essential to know and understand because this allows us to comprehend the acknowledged life of Milley. The two themes of slavery I would choose for Milley are dehumanization and the treatment of the enslaved. Dehumanization was my first choice because Milley was born into slavery and was sold at 6 years old. She most likely continued to work at the Bush Holly House until the age of 21 due to the Gradual Emancipation Act. The treatment of the enslaved was my second choice because a small amount of information was documented for Milley due to the fact she was an enslaved female. This group of people were barely acknowledged at all during this time period. These themes are important to understand because it helps us to step into the shoes of Milley so we can understand how she may have felt and what she had to go through as an enslaved female. Despite the misfortunes she went through her whole life, Despite the misfortunes she went through in slavery, Milley should continue to be recognized and remembered as we continue to dig into the unknown lives of enslaved people in slavery.
Beautiful job, Oriel. Next, we have Elizabeth coming to tell the story of Rose.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Devine, and I'm currently a 7th grader at Sacred Heart. This year, our history class worked on a research project on Rose, the daughter of Patience and Cole. From May 15, 1793 to May 15, 1814, Rose was an enslaved person and lived at least some of her life here at the Bush Holly House. We know Rose was initially owned by David Bush, but when he passed away, he gave Rose to his daughter Grace. There are no records of the end of her life, but legally, Rose would have been freed through the Gradual Emancipation Act in 1814. Take a minute to think about your daily life, the night school that you attend, your after-school activities, and your free time that you spend on TikTok or Netflix. Most of us take our freedoms for granted. Most of the things that we do on a daily basis would have been unimaginable to an enslaved person like Rose. At the beginning of the year, I most vividly remember learning about 5 themes of slavery: dehumanization, treatment of the enslaved, human agency, economy, and paternalism. Throughout my research on Rose, it became clear to me that Rose was constantly faced with these 5 themes of slavery. Throughout Rose's life, she experienced hardships and unfair treatment. She was forced to do manual labor without pay, lived in a small attic with her family of 8, and took care of her owners, among many other things. When Rose was finally freed by the Gradual Emancipation Act, we're not completely sure what happened to her. Although the main focus of our project was to learn about Rose's life and understand how being enslaved affected her life, there wasn't very much information about Rose and her life because enslaved people were thought of as property and like something that could be given away or traded. The records that we researched didn't have much information about Rose individually, but when we pieced together the information, we were able to understand some of Rose's life and the struggles that she faced on a daily basis. Although progress in remembering enslaved people has improved, there's still so much that can be done to make sure that enslaved people like Rose are remembered. Rose and every other enslaved person is worthy of being remembered because they are human just like us, but they lived in a time period when people who looked like them were thought of and treated as less than a person. Rose should always be remembered as a person who had many bad experiences, but she did the best that she could to live a normal life. Enslavement in the United States was a horrible thing, so we have to do everything that we can to keep taking steps to make sure that enslaved people are honored and their lives are remembered, such as doing research projects, coming to the place where they were enslaved, and spreading awareness about the hardships that they faced. So many enslaved people were forgotten over the years, and it's our job to make sure we give them the remembrance that they deserve because enslaved people were human beings and they deserve to be remembered. Thank you.
Lovely. So next we're going to have our speakers from Bundrake and Greenwich Academy. I didn't have